Hey everyone, so in this section we're going to talk about whether or not a PhD can make you financially successful over the period of your career. Now this is an idea that has formed over the past couple of decades, and I think to a certain degree it has some roots in the Rich Dad Poor Dad series, which by the way is a phenomenal series and particularly a phenomenal book that I highly recommend everybody check out if you haven't already. It's in my opinion one of the best books that's ever been written. I think everyone should read it. But in that book, Robert Kiyosaki does a phenomenal job at outlining the differences between his rich dad and his poor dad and kind of attributing some of their successes and failures to some of their biggest life decisions. In the case of his poor dad happened to have a PhD and worked in academia for most of his career. As a result of this, I think a lot of people came out of this series looking at the PhD as kind of a way that's going to limit some of your potential financial success throughout the period of your career. Now, in this segment, I'm hoping to play devil's advocate here because to a certain degree, I think that this might be true, but I also do think that holistically, it isn't necessarily the case. And particularly, it's going to depend largely on the candidate. So I'd like to play the other side of this as well. So one of the things to really consider first is the fact that if you're to look at any industry you can think of, whether it's the technology sector, the finance sector, the pharmaceutical sector, government, even academia to a certain extent, all of these sectors are laced with PhD graduates who have been able to have extraordinary amounts of success within these fields or have been able to commercialize their knowledge in non traditional ways as well. Great example is there's tons of hedge fund managers, mutual fund managers, private equity executives, in addition to tons of technology founders or technology advisors, executives, pharmaceutical executives, even people who've done very well in government and academia who've been able to commercialize their knowledge in non-traditional ways as well. One of the things to remember about the PhD is the fact that it's one of the ways, it's probably the most traditional or one of the most traditional ways of just essentially certifying that you're an expert in a particular subsect of a particular field of study. Now, this isn't the only way that you can actually certify that you're an expert. Another way in some cases is a master's degree could be sufficient in some cases, or in some other cases you might have a number of years of experience in a particular field, or you might have written a book about a particular field of study as well. And in those cases, you might also be considered an expert. However, the PhD might open up some doors that candidates might not have otherwise had open to them. And a great example of this is maybe speaking at some conferences or being part of some committees that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to be part of, or maybe even getting a book deal as a result of being a PhD and just having very specialized knowledge in this particular field of study. Now, while this doesn't always lead to financial success directly, it might open up other opportunities and other doors to commercialize in the future as well. So again, a lot of the financial success is going to come from the individual candidates' ability to commercialize and their motivation to financially commercialize the knowledge that they're able to pursue through their PhD studies. One of the other things to really consider is the profile of candidates that tend to look at the PhD. And in some cases, there are people who go to a PhD because they want to pursue a life of research and higher learning and are not financially motivated at all. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. With that said, there are also people on the other end of the spectrum who do want to commercialize their knowledge in other ways and who are very financially motivated. And there are opportunities for them to do so even with the PhD as well. It's important to remember that the PhD is not necessarily something that's going to be a barricade. It's really just going to provide you with a whole bunch of new knowledge that you might not have otherwise had through your undergraduate or master's level education. And it's going to be up to the candidate to find ways to bring this knowledge to the marketplace in a way that they're able to be financially compensated for. The great thing about academia in some cases, and again, this is going to depend on the particular institution that you happen to be working for, whether it's a research-based professor or a teaching professor, or what's their rank within the institution, what other commitments they have, whether or not they have some flexibility in their schedule as well. Now, this might offer professors the opportunity to work on some external projects, maybe work on some commercial books or work on consulting arrangements with local industries or local companies, or to just commercialize their knowledge in that way as well. This isn't something that's going to be universal that all professors are even interested in, but there might be some opportunities for some professors who want to expand their knowledge and skill set in that way as well. The other thing to really consider is the fact that in addition to being a professor, it's really also an opportunity for you to add on other things to your professional working career. And so a great example, like we mentioned, is maybe working on a consulting or contract basis with certain companies or individuals or executives within companies as well, with local governments, maybe even being able to license some of the intellectual property that you're able to generate over the period of your career as well. Maybe even writing some commercial books. And again, this will kind of fuel the overall brand of the particular candidate or the particular professor who's looking to find other ways to be financially successful in addition to their current obligations. Again, the biggest takeaway for this is really the fact that I don't think people should look at the PhD as a limiting factor and something that's going to limit their potential financial success in the future. I think the biggest thing that's going to limit that is actually them themselves. I think that people should view the PhD as a way to expand upon your knowledge, expand upon the skill set that you might have already been developing through your undergraduate studies, and it's going to be up to them to find ways to bring this to the marketplace in the future. What I will say is that if the financial outcomes of having a PhD is your biggest motivation in pursuing a PhD, then you absolutely need to rethink going down this route. It's going to be one of the most intellectually challenging things that anyone can ever pursue. And if this is your only mission coming out of the program, then I think you're really going to struggle with even getting through the program. So it's something that you should definitely reconsider. I should also say that the PhD, again, isn't something that's for everyone. And in fact, in most cases, I don't think most people should pursue the PhD. I just don't think people should rule out this opportunity because they feel like they're going to be limited financially in the future as well. So I hope that we've added some clarification, or this has acted as kind of a great introduction to you as well, and it's kind of play devil's advocate to some of the more traditional ideas that you've probably come across as well. I'd like to hear your comments, questions, and concerns in the comment section below. Do you have a PhD, or have you ever thought about it before? Do you know anyone else who has? Do they regret it, or do you regret it? I'd love to hear your feedback in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much again for listening. If you appreciated this and you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.